The Ducks do it again, meaning win by a one score. Well, the Canes do it again, meaning lose by one score again for a seventh consecutive time against a Power 5 opponent. We've got a 31-30 game in Coral Gables. NC State looking to stay undefeated in the ACC. Bama blasts Heupel's balls, but they are definitely game. That team in Tennessee getting better, looking good. The Buckeyes roll. The Hoosiers roll over. Clemson, an underdog for the first time since 2014 in the ACC, and they looked like an underdog. Pitt goes to 6-1. Iowa State says, remember us? Knock off an undefeated top 10 Cowboys team at home and storm the field like an underdog. Caleb Williams says, I'll take that on fourth down. And Penn State says 8 wasn't enough, but 9 was too much. 9 overtimes in Happy Valley, and the Illini pull off the stunner. Welcome to the Voice of College Football for another Saturday night wrap-up show for Week 8 of college football, and we are not done. There is still one to be decided on the East Coast here in Miami, with the Canes hanging on to a 31-30 lead against NC State. Some other action elsewhere to report on. But the Buckeyes and the Tide have wrapped up their primetime games in fairly easy fashion. Ohio State pretty much from the opening minutes in Bloomington, Indiana. And for Alabama, of course, they finally pulled away from Tennessee, but a mighty entertaining game that caught my attention and had me glued up until about 10 minutes left in the game. We will take your calls here at the Voice of College Football, as we always do. I have to set up the phone system. I will do that momentarily after we get through the scores, and also I check out your comments. Keep in mind, did you help build our success, our channel, what we have a mission to do here at the Voice of College Football? You take your part, I will do my part as well. I'm trying. Please like the video before you get comfortable tonight. Please like the video, share these videos out on social media, and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. It appears as though Miami's gotten a turnover. They've got the ball with 2:45 left in the fourth quarter, leading by 1. Again, please like the video. You can at least do that. Even if you don't agree with me, if you enjoy what we do, best discussion, debate, and analysis. That's our aim. That's our goal. That's our mission here at the Voice of College Football. Hit the like button. Share these videos out on social media. You've got connections on social media that I do not have. Folks out there don't know that we're here talking college football every day. Have no idea who I am, who you are, what we're doing here talking college football. So please let them know. Share the videos out on social media. Share these links even as we speak. Share the link on social media. Let people know on Facebook, on Twitter, and elsewhere that we're here talking college football for the next, 4 or 5 hours. Tyler Van Dyke has broken the 300-yard barrier tonight with 4 touchdowns and no picks. Quite a night for TVD as Miami looks to pull off a very, very, very minor upset in regards to Vegas, but a huge game in the ACC as NC State opens the way for Wake Forest. As the Demon Deacons played out of conference in a 70-56 game. Did you see that score? 70-56. Defense, a non-requirement at Army today. Roberto, 2007, making a comeback, part 8 or 9 of counting week 0. Connor, Oregon State is the best team on the West Coast. Oregon State is the best team on the West Coast. Oregon State is beating Utah tonight. But, of course, that's a Pac-12 network game. John, the Ohio State is the best team in college football right now. Would love to know, John, who you root for. Alex says, go Ohio State. Chuck has a Final Four. People love to throw out their Final Fours, and that's certainly something that you are wanting to do. Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Oregon is his Final Four. The real MVP was convinced by this Ohio State win against Indiana, I guess. Chuck says the winner of the Pac-10 should be in. I think we got rid of that conference a long time ago there, Chuck. The Pac-10. David, Sooners are way overrated. Shouldn't be number 3, yet alone in the top 5. So Oklahoma, Kansas. What about that game? Oklahoma was being shut out in the first half against Kansas. They were trailing late in the third quarter. I had no desire to watch that game for obvious reasons. I thought it was going to be 63-7. Then at halftime, I thought, okay, 10-0 Kansas. I'm going to start watching this. And 17-7 Kansas near the end of the third quarter. That's when I thought Oklahoma's still going to win this game. But man, this could be rather interesting. And it was. It was interesting. Oklahoma did not, of course, look good in that one. Shut out in the first half by Kansas. Alex, Penn State lost to Illinois in 9 overtimes. Yes, I got the news on that. Chris letting us know Cincinnati is 7-0. That was not an easy one for the Bearcats. Indiana, I believe they were playing Navy. Yes, I don't know why Indiana came out of my mouth. They did play Indiana, beat them by 2 touchdowns. Today was Navy. Navy hosting a top 5 team for the first time since 1984. And the midshipmen came down back from 17 down to get within a score, 27-20, lined up for the onside kick, got the onside kick, 48 seconds left to play, about midfield, got picked off. Lucas says the Buckeyes didn't even need the starters in the second half. Big game next week. Yes. Primetime, Penn State, Ohio State at the Shoe. Tony, you guys really think the committee will take Ohio State over Oregon if they both win out? It will be interesting. It will be. And for much debate, we posted a video on that this week. So check out our video on the Oregon argument versus the Ohio State argument. Something told me Miami was going to win this game, but all logic and sense told me to pick NC State, which I did. But looks like Miami's going to salt this one away. 2nd and 7, 1:07 left, and NC State has run out of timeouts. So that must be it. Yeah, they're in victory formation because they'll be able to run off, the final 35 seconds and then the final, rest of the game. Yeah, they've done the math, and Miami wins unless they somehow blow a snap a la Joe Pisarcik. But I don't think they're going to take the snap and actually try to hand it off to somebody. Where are you, Herm Edwards? Does anybody get that? Meadowlands, 1978. Herm Edwards. Alex says Alabama does not deserve to be in the top 4. Jeff says roll Tide. Tony says Cincinnati will find a way to lose this year. I would not be surprised. We saw today against a 1-6 Navy team that they came pretty close. No, I'm not going to say like razor thin, close, should have lost the game because they control most of the game, but they should have put away Navy, and they failed to do so and put themselves in a bad situation. Yes, Alabama did struggle to beat Tennessee. Tennessee improving by the week. It got to be improved. You've got to be impressed with Josh Heupel. Got to be impressed with Josh Heupel. Before we set up the phone lines, let's remind you of a few things. We will have Miami post-game against NC State, the Miami-NC State post-game on the Miami channel. So if you're just interested in talking Canes or North Carolina State, but mostly Canes because they'll be talking Canes, you got our guys Ross and Jordan with Miami post-game over on the Miami channel, probably in about 15 or 20 minutes. Then we've also got Notre Dame USC post-game going on right now, right on this channel. So if you go to the front page of the channel, you'll see this live stream, but you'll also see the Notre Dame USC live stream with Nathan and Ben Belden And that's also simulcasting on the Notre Dame channel as well. We've got some Alabama postgame going on right now on the SEC network on our SEC channel. Let's not be confused with the SEC network. Many times people get those confused. Our production budgets are similar, but the SEC channel here at the Voice of College Football, we've got our Alabama-Tennessee post game going on right now. Okay, I want to remind everyone before we open up the phone lines and go through all the final scores here that the Super Chat's available to you as well. If you want to bypass YouTube, go to Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App and just search Mark Rogers TV. Also, if you are able to get us a sponsor in any way, get us in contact with a sponsor, hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. We are in the market for sponsors. There's no reason we shouldn't have a plethora of sponsors here at the Voice of College Football. I would very much like to be doing this same thing next college football season. That is one of my goals, is to have this channel and the series of channels next college football season. So to do so, we would like to have sponsors in place soon. So if you have any connections to sponsors, please hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Houston leads East Carolina 24-10 in the third. Miami just beat NC State 31-30. And I believe that is the only game. Is that right? That's the only game that's out there right now. When does that ever happen? The Pac-12 is all shut down, all done for the night. It's only Houston, East Carolina. It's the only game in town. And it's on ESPN News. Really, there are no games on ESPN or ESPN2, Fox, FS1, anything. That's it. Really, that's crazy. This is truly the wrap-up show for the night, except for you Houston Tulane fans. All right, we will now set up the phone lines here at the Voice of College Football. So hang in there. And again, let's get a sponsor or 2 or 10. Because, again, we would love to be able to do this for everyone next college football season and throughout the off season, of course.
Thank you for calling College Studio. Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
All right, folks, phone lines are open at 860-499-3332 right here at the Voice of College Football. Here we go. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, it's me, Roberto.
Hey, man, what's going on?
Well, it's been a pretty good weekend for Ohio football. Almost disastrous. Cincinnati gave me a little scare in the start of the game, and I had at the same time I was watching the longest game of in FBS history, the Penn State Illinois overtime, and watching the Kansas State. Oh, not Kansas State. Sorry, Kansas Oklahoma upset alert. So busy 12 noon games, and then I just had to cool off after that Penn State Illinois overtime.
Akron lost today, though.
Oh shit! All right,
Akron lost. I think
Buffalo.
The Bobcats lost as well.
The Cavs won.
Bowling Green. The who? The Cavs. Virginia. They won tonight. Virginia won.
No. Cleveland Cavs.
Who?
I meant the other
Who? Virginia Cavaliers. Need to correct you, Roberto. It's the Virginia Cavaliers, the Virginia Cavs. Yes. Don't think Cleveland State is a college football team. Don't think they ever went that route. They did make it to a Sweet 16 in basketball once. All right, Roberto, what's going on tonight?
More chaos, as you saw. Oklahoma State went down despite, I don't know what happened in the sportsmanlike conduct penalty. And Cincinnati almost got a scare against Navy. I mean, it was 27-20, but like the blocked field goal near the end of the half probably altered the scoreboard a bit and probably could have been closer.
Well, it would have been closer. I think you can state that as a definite.
I don't know what happened there. I think poor clock management by Navy on that last drive before the half. That was just almost, that was already disastrous. I think they got a sack or something, and then they had to go for the field goal, and you know what happened. It blocked, put it in field goal range for Cincinnati, and they made that long 50-yard field goal. And I don't know what's going on, like people with teams overlooking for the Ohio State game for Penn State. Because this happened in 2019 with Wisconsin losing to Illinois too. And then I think 2016 with Michigan losing to Iowa, although that's probably more to do with the Iowa hostile environment than anything. But they always lose. Some teams just lose at the bad time before they play us. And it just alters the strength of schedule a bit. Well, that's it. So anyways, I think that should be it for me.
Well, Roberto, I'm glad that you enjoyed the college football today. It was exciting. I know a lot of people complained out there about there not being any marquee matchups, but we can still have fun. We can still enjoy the games, and there's always going to be close games. Mm-hmm. And actually, it was an important day for conference championship races. So even though not necessarily ranked teams played, people get hung up on rankings, and the Clemson Pitt game, the Virginia Georgia Tech game, the NC State Miami game, Oklahoma State Iowa State, Oregon UCLA, the Oregon State Utah game, all those games and more were very important toward conference championship races. Purdue and Wisconsin.
Oh, I didn't watch much after the long 4. I think it was 4 hours of the Penn State Illinois game. I watched every single overtime, and it was just it's exhausting. That like by the time that game ended, Oregon UCLA first quarter ended. And the Clemson Pitt game was with like 1 minute left in the first quarter. It was just that long of just, I don't know, horrible passing, questionable play calling, and then finally the broken down coverage from, well, not really broken coverage, but bad coverage on that back in the end zone catch for Illinois to get the win. And Illinois was pounding them in the run game for like 350 yards. And they didn't bother running at all in the 2-point conversions, except one when they tried to bounce it on the left, and Penn State easily stuffed it out for a loss. Like they were using that 7 lineman tech strategy to just pound them at will. And they don't want to use it for a 2-point conversion.
Well, they got the job done in the end. Well, Roberto,
they still got the win.
They did.
They still got the win, but they got their quarterback killed. That they have to put Brandon Peters in to get the win.
So wait a second. Before I let you go, you were complaining that they didn't throw the ball enough, but you were criticizing them. You were criticizing them that they got their quarterback almost killed. Well, they called a pass play that he was rolling out when he got hurt.
I mean, that they didn't run. I'm sorry, I meant that they didn't run the ball at all in these 2-point conversions, except for one. When they were killing Penn State in the ground game all day,
Yes, they were.
it just doesn't make it.
All right, Roberto. Well, I appreciate it. Call back anytime.
All right, thank you.
Have a good night. Thanks.
See.
All right, here we go with the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Mark, it's the real MVP. How you doing?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Well, it was a great day of college football.
Yeah,
While there
I think
wasn't
so.
any ranked versus ranked games, that doesn't mean they're great. There's going to be bad games.
No,
I
it
mean,
doesn't.
UCLA Oregon was a great game. Wake Forest Army was a great game. Illinois Penn State was a good game. NC State Miami. There was a lot of great games today.
Yeah, for sure. In a lot of important games.
Exactly. The ACC picture looks a whole lot more clear in the Atlantic Division.
Does it?
Wake Forest. Yeah, Wake Forest is a whole game ahead.
Well, they've got to play NC State. But yeah,
but
they
with
have a
NC
one-game lead. Yes, they do.
I would feel confident. Let me put it this way. If NC State can lose to Miami, they can lose just about anybody in the ACC.
Oh, well, sure. They can all lose to anybody. I'm pretty confident anybody in the ACC can lose to anybody else. Pretty confident of that at this point.
Which is why I think the one-game lead is so important. Because it's entirely possible that Wake Forest loses to NC State, but NC State loses to some other team.
True. True. I would be concerned with the Wake Forest defense. And I'm not just basing that on today giving up 1 million yards and points to Army, but other efforts this season. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I think that NC State, Wake Forest, Clemson, all those teams are capable of winning against each other, and somebody's going to get hot. Somebody's going to win a game that they're not supposed to. Well, and yeah, I can't really handicap that. We've got Pitt, and really Pitt's in control in the Coastal, but still they've only played 3 games and they've got 5 left.
Right. Well, doesn't Virginia also control their destiny?
Virginia, I believe they have 1 loss. If they only have 1 loss in the conference, why did I think they had 2? No,
I thought they were 4-1 or 4-0.
Virginia's 4-2 in the conference, so they do not control their own destiny. Pitt does, of course, at 3-0.
That's also something I wish we could address. If we have some conferences teams that have only played like 3 games, and some of them have already played 6. Can we keep a somewhat range?
Why?
Like, I get it. If you're on a why?
It all comes out the same at the end. They all play 8 games.
That's true.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I don't think there's a right or wrong here. I'm just wondering why you think it matters. It doesn't matter to me.
For simplicity's sake and for the casual fans, I think it's easier to follow because sometimes I'll be honest, I get lost in how many games has this played and how does it affect the standings, and it sometimes can get difficult. That's all I'm saying. It's not a top tier concern or anything like that. It's just a small gripe I have, a very small gripe.
Well, it is funny, like you say, that Pitt has played 3 games in conference and Virginia's played 6, because we've got, we've got roughly 5 to 6 weeks left in the season. So this is telling me, obviously, that Virginia's only got 2 more games in the conference, and Pitt's got 5. So Pitt's going to be playing all conference games for the rest of the season. They've played all their non-conference games, while Virginia still has to play. They still have to play 2 non-conference games, whoever those are. Notre Dame's going to be one of them for sure. So they're playing Notre Dame and somebody else, probably Old Dominion or somebody like that. And yeah, it is kind of strange, although it's not going to stay because of when you think of some of the rivalries, it would never be exactly even because, for example, some teams in the SEC and the ACC play the last weekend of the season, and that's tradition.
Right.
But
I'm not
I
saying
get
it
your
has to
point.
be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be completely even. It could be within 2 games, though.
Yeah.
For goodness sake, I
Yeah,
mean, you
3
got
games
3,
is
4.
it is odd. It's 3 games. Yeah, this deep into the season.
So I was also
Ooh,
going to ask you about
interesting.
Wake
Hey,
Forest.
I hate to cut you off
What?
there to real MVP. So I popped up Virginia's schedule. Their other out of conference game besides Notre Dame is BYU. So they only have
Yeah, I just pulled up.
yeah, they've got only 2. They've only got 4 games left, and they've got 2 non-conference and 2 conference games. So they've got that Pitt game. So all they can do is obviously beat Pitt and beat Virginia Tech and hope Pitt loses another game, and then Virginia will go to the ACC championship game. Interesting.
Pitt play. Virginia going to the ACC championship game is something. Well, I mean, it is the Coastal, but still, that is still kind of a weird statement to say.
They were just there 2 years ago.
I was weird then.
Okay. All
that
right.
whole division is weird.
Okay.
The Coastal is a weird place to be.
Oh yes, it's a fun place to be to real MVP. Let's look at the bright side.
Yes, it is. Pittsburgh has got. They play Miami, Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, and Syracuse going out. That Syracuse could be sneaky good for them. But other than that, I think there's going to be a lot of wins for them.
Yeah, that's what I say about the ACC is that really Duke has been the only consistently awful team that you can almost count on everybody just blowing away. But even Syracuse, they beat Virginia Tech today. They took Clemson, Wake Forest, and Florida State to the final play of the game.
And those are all, I mean, all solid football teams. And I'm going to give Willie Taggart, Florida State, a little bit of credit. When they went 0-4, they could have completely folded in on the season, but they bounced back strong with 3 straight wins.
Who's coaching Florida State?
Huh?
Who's coaching Florida State?
I thought it was Willie. It's not Willie Taggart, is it?
No, you're 2 years behind. Willie Taggart has moved on. They gave him a lot of money and said hit the road. Mike Norvell.
Mike Norvell.
Yes.
Mike Norvell.
Willie Taggart's coaching FAU, correct? FAU. Yes.
Well, as a Kentucky fan, we haven't changed coaches in a while. We used to be in that dungeon, but we've moved out of that dungeon. So
you have.
Yeah, we have moved out of that dungeon. We got it. Hopefully, we can offer him a lifetime contract if the NCAA allows us to. But that'll be for a later off-season discussion. I've got to ask you, Mark. Why in Army Wake Forest? Why was everybody open all the time? Was it flag football they were playing halfway through the game? Like what? I mean, you look at the TV, you go flip it to see Illinois Penn State, and 2 touchdowns have already been scored. It's like, what? Did you see any of that game?
I saw the highlights. It's on my DVR.
Right.
I recorded it. If I really want to go back and watch 126 points get scored, which can be fun. But I will say the same thing about that game based on your comment that I used to say about the Big 12 all the time. I'm not into watching flag football, and I love watching great offense. I love watching a 45-42 game if the offense had to work for it. If guys are like breaking tackles and if wide receivers are high pointing the football and fighting defenders for the ball and making ridiculous catches and the quarterbacks have to throw in tight windows because the coverage is so good. Not when guys are just running around the secondary with nobody within 20 yards and nobody really cares about tackling. Those games I'm not interested in watching. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. And then, so did you see any of the Alabama-Tennessee game?
Oh, yes. I didn't watch it early,
I'm going to be honest.
and then I got into it in the second half. I watched the second half.
Maybe it's because of the high standards I have. Well, everybody has for Alabama, but if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm sweating some bullets tonight because I know the score was 52-24, but they did not look impressive at all for 3 quarters of play.
They didn't. You're right.
And not only was that the main issue, but it was procedural penalties. False starts, delays the game, a blocked punt. I mean, I don't know the last time an Alabama team's ever done that in a game. It's unexplainable. And I know why Alabama fans, they should be happy with the final score because they won the game and everything,
and they covered the spread.
And they covered the spread. I'm less confident today that they're going to beat Georgia than I was before the game was played.
More confident?
Would you agree with less?
Oh, yeah.
Like I get.
Well, I'm about the same.
I would.
I think Georgia's a better team. I'm not going to be surprised if Alabama beats Georgia again, but they are continuing to make the same mistakes. They do not control the line of scrimmage on the offensive side as they typically do. The quarterback's under fire more so than what we've seen in the past. The running backs do not have the gaping holes that they typically do. So the offensive line's not as dominant at Alabama this year as it typically is. They make way more mistakes. When have you ever seen, I would love for somebody to let us know when Alabama has had a punt blocked, and like any one of 3 guys could have blocked that punt, basically. The coverage completely broke down. And they were beaten consistently on defense against a decent Tennessee team. I think Josh Heupel's doing a nice job with Tennessee. They're much better than I expected them to be at this point. But still, Alabama should not be pushed to a 1-score game halfway through the 4th quarter at home against Tennessee.
Right. I mean, I know this might be a little over-dramatic step I'm taking here, but they got to go to Auburn this year.
Yeah.
And everybody's just assuming that they're going to make the SEC championship game. It's entirely possible that Auburn beats Bama this year. Especially at Auburn, because Bama fans will be the first to tell you weird things happen at Auburn.
So Texas A&M has the tiebreaker over Alabama. And Ole Miss has only lost 1 game in the SEC. So either one of those teams could be dangerous to Alabama because, of course, if Bama loses, then Ole Miss, if they run the table, they win the West. Or if Texas A&M runs the table, they've got the tiebreaker.
Well, also, if Auburn's only got 1 loss in conference, if they win out, they're in.
True. There you go.
I mean, that's
You're right.
Now, that's the simplest path because their other loss was against Penn State. And then what happened for, like, LSU last week? After Coach O, he was going to go to the end of the season. They showed resilience. They showed heart for their coach, and they beat Florida, who not a great team, but a good team, a decent team, probably top 40 in the country. And this year, I mean, Ole Miss's defense is nowhere near as. I mean, I know LSU's offense isn't great, but my goodness, I mean, they got bludgeoned. I mean, they got beaten, bruised around, and they got whipped everywhere at every position. Are we going to get more of the LSU from that game, or are we going to get more of the LSU from the Florida game?
So, yeah, I'm seeing that 31-17. I didn't watch 1 play of this game. Again, I had the DVR running, so I've got the DVR on everything, but that doesn't mean I'm going to have a chance to watch it. But 31-17, and LSU had to score 10 straight points at the end of the game just to make it close. So it was 31-7. Yeah. So I see that Ole Miss racked up 266 yards of rushing, and LSU only had 77, a little over 2 yards per carry. So they obviously got dominated up front. Yeah. Well, I think what you're going to get is very sporadic play out of LSU, because basically what LSU has is no motivation, no leadership. They have a ton of injuries to very exceptional players, 3 in their secondary, 2 of the best corners in college football. But the one thing that they do have is speed and just ridiculous amounts of talent in certain areas. So I think what you can expect is both of what you just mentioned, sporadic play.
I get that. Well, do you think there could be some motivation for LSU in just making a bowl game?
Well, I don't know
They're
what
gonna have to
motivates
pull-
those guys. I don't know. I can't answer that question. I can tell you that they've got a number of players that I would think that if you were a college football player at LSU, most of them have NFL aspirations. So that should be motivation in and of itself. That if you can make yourself a second or third round pick instead of a last round pick or a free agent, the money difference is enormous.
Right. That makes sense. So, and the final one of the games I'm going to also talk about is Illinois Penn State. As you know, and everybody knows, Penn State lost. But what was your thought on the new overtime rule? Because this was the first game where it had a substantial impact on the outcome of the game.
We have Yakov 22's comment on the screen, and I left it up there because I was going to address this after your call. It says, Mark, did you find the alternating 2-point conversions to be compelling football? I did not. I don't like it, but I understand why it's in play. It's in play to get the game over and the players off the field and exerting themselves less chance of injury. That's everything that it has to do with. Has nothing to do with anything else in enhancing the game or the viewing experience or anything. It has everything to do with limiting injuries and wear and tear. So I get it. I don't like it. I don't like contrived situations in sports.
Right.
Meaning
you're not a penalty kicks type of guy.
Penalty kick. Yeah. Because this has nothing to do with, first of all, I'm not into penalty kicks in any such way because I hate soccer. But number two, yes, it is a situation that in no other way is addressed during the natural course of the game. A penalty shot, it'd be like an NBA game or a college basketball game being decided by free throws. It's like when Major League Baseball did this a couple of years ago. Well, must have been during the pandemic year. And you see this in softball where they go to extra innings and they just throw somebody out on second base. Well, how did that individual get on second base? They didn't do anything to get there. You're just putting a person on second base. Nothing happened to put the ball at the 25-yard line or the 2-yard line, but we're just putting it there. But I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. So I'm okay with it.
I think at least if they want to go for the safety route, I think instead of moving the ball after the first out over at the 20, you either just do what the NFL does, where you have one possession, except you change it where if they score a touchdown, the other team has to score a touchdown. So that's the only part of the NFL rule I don't like, because if you get the offense, you can go score a touchdown in a game. I feel like the other team should have a chance. But besides that, instead of putting it on the 25-yard line, put it on the 10. Make it a first and goal situation, because that can arise in a game. And that would shorten the number of plays, which would make it safer, and I also think would open up the playbook enough and allow the field goal kicker to have an impact on the game. Because what I don't like about the new overtime rule is you're eliminating a third of the game in special teams. And I think that should have a bigger role in the outcome of the game, especially in this Penn State-Illinois game, because the field goal kickers were some of the most crucial part, maybe even the most crucial part of the game.
For sure. All right, man. Well, I appreciate the call.
Yeah, Mark, it was good talking to you, and I hope you have a good rest of your show.
Always. Have a good one, man.
You did the same.
Let's keep it moving here. The voice of college football. We appreciate everybody's patience in waiting. Welcome into the show. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Bash.
Hey, Bash. What's going on?
You know, I come here in peace. I come here with no disrespect, and I don't want to be the guy to tell you I told you so.
Okay.
But my gosh, do you see the impact of missing PJ Mustipher in the middle had? 357 rush yards. Do you think they have that with the dominant force up front like PJ Mustipher?
In what way did I disagree with you?
Well, I mean, I thought that was a huge reason why Penn State wasn't a bigger threat than Michigan is. And I think now, after, just thinking about it, and I don't know how big of it, but if they go to J.J. McCarthy to open up the pass game, Michigan's really got a chance. Cornelius Johnson kind of reminds me of Devin Smith back in 2014. A little bit. Kind of looks like him. So I still think Michigan is the biggest threat to Ohio State in the Big Ten East. And now that Penn State's 2 games down no matter what, even if they go into the shoe and win, which they're not going to.
Okay.
I definitely also was, I don't think anybody really saw that coming. But if you would have told me that Illinois was going to have success running the ball, I wouldn't have doubted it. They actually are a pretty decent rushing team, and you take out PJ Mustipher in the middle. That's why Illinois won the game, right? Is that run game?
Yeah. Well, they said during the broadcast that there were 3 interior defensive linemen missing. They didn't name them, but they said 3.
Not just Mustipher. Got it. Yeah, I was watching Kansas, Oklahoma for the most part with the audio on. I had many different games on, but the one with the audio on for most of the game was that Kansas, Oklahoma game, which don't even get me started on that forward handoff. I think that was a terrible call.
I haven't even seen that yet.
I think Kennedy, I'm going to let you form your own opinion. My opinion, for everybody who did see it, I thought Kennedy Brooks passed the line of scrimmage, but barely. It was a 4th and 1 that Oklahoma was up 20. I think at this point it was 21-17 maybe, or 28-23. No, it was later than that. 28-23. And it was a 4th and 1 that Lincoln Riley decided to hand it off to Kennedy Brooks. He was stuffed, and he handed it off forward to Caleb Williams. And they called it a legal forward handoff because the ball never crossed the line of scrimmage, is what I was told. I thought, or is what the ref said. I thought the ball crossed the line of scrimmage. So I guess it's just all opinionated. So it's not the worst call I've ever seen. And Oklahoma's a better team than Kansas anyway. But my gosh, Oklahoma needs to wake up. Like, they can't keep doing this. Spencer Rattler excuse is not an excuse anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, based on what I'm looking at, I just looked at the play. I don't think there was it wasn't even close to the line of scrimmage. If the black line's the line of scrimmage, they were way behind the line of scrimmage. So that's not
when he handed it off right before progress. I thought.
Oh, I got you. So he may have I got you. Okay.
Yeah. It was pretty close, so I'm not that's not a hill I'm going to die on, especially, again, like I said, they're a better team than Kansas. I kind of expected their defense to stand up. Who knows what could have happened if that was called differently.
Well, your point could be that, they are a better team than Kansas. Why are they winning by 5 points with 3 minutes left in the game going for 4th and 1?
You're favored by 38.5, and you trailed for 3 quarters. They were down by 10 going into the 4th.
Yeah, we've gotten all indications through 6 or 7 weeks that Kansas is horrible.
Yes. They was losing to Duke by 19, 52-33 enough to tell you that?
Yeah, they've lost everybody by a lot. They lost to Baylor like 59-7, and Kansas and everybody. They're just awful, and they've been awful forever. So I was, wow. Even if Oklahoma's sleepwalking, you would think that they win that game 38-10. So
Yeah, right. I mean, credit to Lance Leopold. I think he's building something. He took a lot of transfers, though, including from his own team. A lot of new players out there for Kansas. But he took over a mess, a disaster. And that's not going to get fixed this year for sure. But so credit for him getting his team prepared and momentum. But a lot of that has to do with Oklahoma.
yeah, I would agree.
I thought it was a pretty one of the quote unquote sleepy days. Wasn't super sleepy, and that's how it always works. And everybody's like, "Oh, it's not that exciting this week," and I'm like, "Dude, it's college football.
Yeah,
like something's going to happen that's going to drop your jaw." I also personally, by the way, going back on that conversation, I liked the 2-point conversion thing. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, and I was yelling at my TV, "Why aren't you throwing it to number 5? Why aren't you just giving him a shot? Like they missed like 5 in a row. They missed 5 out of 6. Maybe I think it was actually what it was. 5 out of 6, and they didn't try to go in any overtime play. They didn't try to go to Jahan Dotson, who a lot of people think could be the best receiver in the Big Ten, but certainly in that top 5,
Yep.
the best playmaker on the field. Why wouldn't you go to number 5 that entire time? But running Noah Cain up the middle 4 times makes so much sense. But we're not known. I mean, James Franklin's not necessarily known for making smart decisions late in games when they need to pick up some yardage, is he? Ohio State 2018.
yeah, and I really don't understand
Hey, you
that.
having fun today?
But did I have fun today?
Yeah, did you have fun today?
Yeah, well, I like you.
Lots of
I could
others.
see that there were no marquee matchups, but I anticipated something to happen, and we got very close
Right.
to. We got somewhat close to more chaos. We got close to Oklahoma, and we got close to Cincinnati, and a few others
Tennessee
that could have
Within
happened.
1 score late.
Pardon me?
Tennessee was within 1 score. I never thought
Yeah.
Tennessee would win, but Tennessee, again, if you let a team hang around for long enough, and eventually Alabama in that 4th quarter put them away, you let a team hang around for long enough. That's what I was scared about with watching Ohio State tonight, because as you know, again, objectively, I'm a Buckeye fan, but I was worried about letting Indiana stay in. When Indiana drove down that field and scored that touchdown on their first drive of the game, I was like, oh gosh, I really just hope that this isn't a 4-quarter game. And it turns out it isn't. And credit to Ohio State, because that offense played against a pretty tough Indiana defense. They're nothing special, but a pretty tough Indiana defense who their season high allowing this season was 38 against Cincinnati. Ohio State scored 44 in the first half. So Ohio State's looking probably like the biggest challenger to Georgia right now. If I just got to be objective, Georgia's clearly number 1. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. But if there's anybody who could really match up with Georgia, probably Alabama and Ohio State. And I don't even know if Alabama's going to get to Georgia. I don't know if Ohio State's going to get to Georgia.
Well, Georgia's going to get tested.
So-
When have we ever seen a team win a
They
national
will.
championship and not get tested? It's never happened.
BYU.
It will be. What's that?
BYU.
BYU. They
Yeah,
didn't.
back in the
They
80s.
didn't play close games in
Didn't get tested.
1984. Heck yeah, they did.
Oh, okay. If you're talking about close games.
Talking about
Okay,
playing close
gotcha.
games.
No, I thought you
Nobody's
were
ever
talking
won a
like
national
quality
championship
of
and
game,
just
quality of
yeah.
opponent.
Yes. Take that up with Chris in the live chat. Yes, BYU didn't play anyone in 1984. Yes. You can take that battle
But they
on
play
for
close
me
games.
tonight.
You know what? I'm kind of tired. I don't know if I want to do that.
Just one day
I
out of
think I'm just gonna
365 for me. I got the other 364. You take up the one for me. And it's almost
Gotcha.
midnight. You only have to take it up for like an hour. Yeah, let's see what Michigan does
Do you
against
even then
Indiana's
want to do
defense
it?
in 2 weeks. Let's see what they do.
I'm curious to see about that too. Because Micah McFadden, he opened up the second half. He doesn't quit, man. He's a really good player. I love watching Micah McFadden, and it's a shame that they've kind of had the rough start to the schedule that they've had. It really is, because the Indiana teams are, granted, not much better. I think they're more like a 500 team, but they're better than their record shows. They've just gone up against. I mean, they're 6 losses now, or 5 losses. Sorry, 5 losses. I'm already including Michigan. 5 losses now to 5 ranked opponents, right?
Yes.
I mean, we'll see if Penn State stays, but that's just crazy.
I think
But,
Indiana's
hey, thanks
lost
for letting
to
me
all
have the
top
floor,
10
Mark.
teams, I believe. Haven't they?
Are you talking about at the time or currently? Because currently, yes, but Penn State's about to
Yes.
drop out.
So there you go.
It won't stand.
Well, thanks for the call.
All right. Well, thank
Appreciate
you
it.
for letting me have the floor.
Absolutely. Have a
You
good
have a
one.
good
All right. Appreciate the super chat coming in from Terry, who asks, do you think Ohio State needs to make any more changes on defense, or are they set? So the best offense that Ohio State has faced this year is Minnesota. Minnesota's got the best offense, and even that offense is a different offense here in week 7 or 8 than they faced in the opener. They lost one of the best running backs in the nation, and they lost his backup, who had run for about 150 yards in 3 consecutive games. And Ohio State did not have to face, I think Chris Autman-Bell was limited in that game. That, I believe, is the best defense offense in a winning game. I should point that out. But the way Oregon's playing on offense, maybe they're not the best offense Ohio State's played. The way Oregon's played against everybody else, it's kind of a close call. And Maryland has weapons, but they were missing 2 against Ohio State. They lost 1 in game, and then they lost 1 before the game. They're 2 4- and 5-star wide receivers. This Indiana offense, I don't know that anybody's become more derailed in their plans for a season than Indiana, because they have played a difficult schedule. And once Michael Penix was hurt and they had other injuries, Indiana's they've just come unraveled. So the Ohio State defensive effort tonight was impressive in that they did their jobs. They only gave up 7 points. What the final was 54-7, correct? So they only gave up the 1 touchdown in the first drive, and then they cleaned it up after that, and they put pressure on the quarterback consistently. So they whipped the Indiana offensive line. They tackled in space. The one thing that hit me during that game, and I only watched the first half because I try to watch all the competitive action. So I've got a game plan when I watch games, because there's always about 7 or 8 games on, and I've got a game plan as to which games are the most important and I want to see. But then as games go out of hand, like the Ohio State game by halftime, well, then I toss that game and replace it. So I just watched the first half and a couple plays of the second half. But it struck me during that game, I thought, there is more gap integrity. So what you saw the first several weeks, and specifically against Oregon more than any other team, was a lack of gap integrity. So they've taught and developed the linebackers to stay where they need to be to plug up running lanes. That we see consistently now. We don't see players out of position. We see a more aggressive team too. I think that they are learning to play with each other. They're getting comfortable playing with each other. That's another thing that Ohio State was doing early on. Maybe they were playing too many players. And now they've got a more tightened rotation, both at the defensive line, which I was never concerned with, even though they played below expectations early in the season, but especially in the secondary and with the linebackers. They were playing too many players. Those players could not get comfortable with each other. And it seems as though they've tightened up the rotations, which is good. They have a better feel for who they like on the field. And those players are playing with so much, they're playing with so much more confidence. And this has allowed them to be faster. So they're faster in their assignments. They can play based on that 4- and 5-star talent that God gave them without thinking about it, trying to read everything and diagnose everything. They're diagnosing it instinctually, and they're reading their keys quicker, which makes them faster. When you could be a 5-star athlete with tremendous speed, but if you read the play, even if you read the play correctly, but a couple beats after you should, then you're just slow to the play. You're slow to the play, and if you're not sure, you're just not going to drive home to that play as fast as you would. And they seem to be flying around more. Now, the Buckeyes have Penn State next week. So they're going to face a legitimate quarterback and passing attack, offensive line. Noah Cain's a good back, but he's not doing anything because the offensive line play. Ohio State should be able to take advantage of this matchup up front with the way they're playing along the defensive front versus the offensive line. And it was mentioned by, I don't want to botch his name because he's a really good color analyst, Dusty Dvorak, right? He said Tyleik Williams jumped out to him on tape that he was the best defensive lineman for Ohio State. And I tend to agree with him. Bilal, good to see you. Appreciate that. Mark, the Buckeyes defensive line played their best game so far this season. Finally, we're getting injured players back. Yes. So you're right there with me, Bilal. I was stating the same thing as we were talking about that, responding to the other question. So, Bilal, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Yes, the Buckeyes are playing defensive front like we expected. I thought going into this season, I thought, okay, let's give this defensive line a bit of a break because as talented as it is, Jack Sawyer's new, JTT's new. They're so gifted, but you can only expect so much. They still have to learn to play. They still have never been with these kind of athletes surrounding them on both sides of the ball on a field with 100,000 people watching. And it's just a completely different experience. Guys are strong. They're facing 22-year-old guys, and they just graduated from high school. So regardless of how talented, so what they're doing with just 3 and 4 and 5 weeks game reps is really good. But I just thought that they could go out there and at least be good. So I was surprised at how poorly the defensive line played the first 3 games. Chris, I remember it well. The 79 Indiana BYU Holiday Bowl game, 38-37, I believe, was the final score, I believe. Lee Corso, of course, Lavelle Edwards, the 2 coaches in that game. Yes. Mike says James Franklin blows big games like Brian Kelly. Anytime somebody mentions big games, a team always blows big games. Like I hear this about Georgia consistently, that they blow big games. I want people to define big games. And many times, as is the example with Georgia, the answer then ultimately becomes national championship games. Okay? National championship games. In that case, of course, James Franklin has yet to make a playoff or a national championship game. He won a Big Ten championship game. He beat Ohio State en route to the Big Ten championship game. He's won a Fiesta Bowl. He's won a Cotton Bowl. So I don't know. I think he's won his share. I can't think of games that James Franklin, for as much as he gets criticized, me included, for not being the best tactician in the sport. I don't know that he's really blown games against teams that he should have beaten in big games. Did they blow this game today against the team they should have beaten? He also had a quarterback who obviously was not right. And they did lose some of their best players on defense that I think to the one caller, I think Bash, his argument about PJ Mustipher, one of the best players in the Big Ten, out, and a total of 3 interior linemen messed up with what I thought early in the season was the Big Ten's, well, I don't know about the Big Ten's best defense. The Big Ten's top 3 defense, along with Iowa and Wisconsin. Now that I've seen Wisconsin for another week and saw what they did against Purdue, they gave up nothing against Purdue. Purdue scored defensively. And otherwise, Wisconsin's defense just, those guys are lights out. Look out for Wisconsin. If they go on a run, we mentioned this last week, it's all in front of them. They've lost 2 games in the Big Ten. Wait a minute. They lost to Penn State and Michigan. Yes, they lost to the 2 teams out of division. So they still have to play everybody in division. They got one big one out of the way today. They've beaten Illinois, which seemed like a joke a week ago, but not necessarily. But they outscored and outgained. They shut out Illinois 24-0. They outgained Illinois 5-1. 5-1. How often do you see that in a conference game? So Wisconsin suddenly becomes a factor. They go on the road. They beat Purdue by 17 points. They don't give up an offensive touchdown. Boomer says James Franklin's an awful coach. I don't really know that there are more than 10 or 15 coaches in the country better than him if you take everything into consideration. And the recruiting, you have to take that into consideration too, because in some ways that's the most important facet of the job. Talent acquisition, depending on where you are. If you're not a great recruiter and you go to Dan Mullen's not a great recruiter. He goes to Florida, the place recruits itself. He doesn't keep up with Georgia in recruiting, but he still is able to pull in top 10 to 15 classes. So he needs to do better than that to win the division because of Georgia's presence, but he can still field top 10 to 15 teams in the country with not great recruiting effort because the school's going to recruit itself to a certain extent. But if you go to a number of places and you expect to win, you're going to have to bust your tail recruiting. Yeah, we got Michigan, Michigan State next week, Penn State, Ohio State. That's going to be great. Minnesota's not good. Minnesota is, when you say good, they're top 40 good. Yes, they are. They're top 40 good. Penn State caught looking ahead. Maybe they were, maybe they're not. We have no idea if Penn State, how motivated they were in this game. I don't know. NBA fan says, I'm pissed that Bryson Shaw is playing. The fact he gets consistent playing time is an indictment on the Ohio State staff as recruits and recruiters and developers. Okay. Ricardo, Mark, who is your favorite to win the World Series? My goodness, for the majority of my life, I could sit here for 5 hours and give you a pretty reasonable breakdown of any World Series because I was that invested, that knowledgeable, and all that. Probably knew as much about Major League Baseball for most of my life as college football, but those days are over. I have no idea. If we want to go Braves and who are they playing? Astros, circa 1995, and we can talk about Tom Glavine and Jeff Bagwell and guys like that, then there you go. Blank name. Hilarious that Mark is making the claim that Wisconsin has a better defense than Michigan. That defense gave up 38 to Michigan, and most of that game was played by Cade McNamara. Yeah, the Wisconsin defense also gave up 42 points to Notre Dame. Or more accurately, Wisconsin gave up 42 points to Notre Dame, not the Wisconsin defense. Yes. Yeah. Well, I was making the statement, blank name, that my assessment after a few weeks of the season was that Penn State had the best defense in the Big Ten after a few weeks of the season. And then, I think that it's a reasonable argument to serve up Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan State at this point, even based on the games that have been played, and also Iowa as top defenses in the Big Ten. I don't think there's any great separation. The game that Michigan played against Nebraska was no work of art defensively. When one of those defenses plays Ohio State, it's going to be interesting, both from the standpoint of the Ohio State offense operating against a first-rate defense and also that first-rate defense. And so that game's going to come next week, Penn State and Ohio State. And teams are a little bit beat up, and Penn State's not going to bring their best from a talent perspective, but that's football. And we are 7 games deep now, so those are to be expected. Bow down to the Ohio State dynasty. Mark, do you think Ohio State drops 60 plus on Harchoke? Yeah, that's a bit much. not going to take the 60 plus effort, most likely. Oh, we got a ball game going in Houston with the Cougars only leading the Pirates 24-23 with 5 minutes left. Look at that. If Ohio State and Michigan played right now, I'll take Ohio State in that game. I'll take Ohio State in that game against Michigan. 38-24. Just understand what we're going to see here in the next 4 or 5 weeks. We're going to see Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State. This is going to tell us everything about these teams, because what we've seen out of Ohio State thus far is they had a fight against Minnesota for 3+ quarters. They beat them by 2 touchdowns on the road, and Minnesota's a top 40 team in the country. Okay. They were completely outplayed by Oregon. Okay. That was week 2. They were completely outplayed by Oregon. How good is Oregon? Well, they're not playing very well, but they keep winning. Oregon's playing like a they're winning like a top 10 team. They're playing like a top 25 or 30 team. They beat Ohio State soundly without some of their best players. Kayvon Thibodeau at the top of the list. Okay. What meant anything after that? The Tulsa game, I don't put a whole lot of stock in. The Buckeyes did not play well. And of course, there was the Akron game, meant nothing. Then we get into Maryland and Rutgers. I thought more highly of Rutgers at the time than I do now for obvious reasons. Maryland, the same. I thought that those teams were fringe bowl teams. They're showing us a little less than that now. But the Buckeyes obliterated them. Nobody else has. I know Iowa hung up 51 on Maryland, but not in the same way. And then what happened tonight, Indiana's not giving up 44 points in the first half to anybody but Ohio State. So it's impressive, but not yet against the teams we would like to see it be impressive against. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4. How are you doing?
McD. How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
You finally got that game against Minnesota today.
Yeah, a long 2-week wait after the Maryland Terps got absolutely embarrassed by Ohio State, which doesn't look as embarrassing as now. They went out there against a Minnesota team that they played in 2019 and 2020. So Mike Locksley has already seen this team twice. He's 1-1 against this team. Well, now he's 1-2 after today, but he was 1-1 going into the game. We know what Minnesota does. They like having 6 big offensive linemen and running the ball, chewing up clock. That's what they do. And the quarterback, Tanner Morgan, is not that good. He's not having a good season. And what does Maryland do? They only stack 6 in the box and get ran all over. This game, the reason why they lost is absolutely because of Mike Locksley and a defensive coordinator not understanding what Minnesota does. And it's absolutely unacceptable. If you're Mike Locksley facing this team twice, how do you not know what Minnesota does? Why are you only paying 6 in the box against Minnesota? You need to pay at least 8 in the box at minimum. I would like to see 9, but that I'm just absolutely disgusted, and I'll let you respond to what I just said, but I want to get more into Mike Locksley here.
I'll make a simple analogy. My daughter used to play softball. She'd play in the outfield, and I would watch game after game after game in which the coaches were conservative and say, play back, play back, play back. And they would field single after single after double after double after single in front of them. And I never saw anybody capable of hitting the ball over their head. So why don't you play up and wait until somebody finally hits the ball over your head? Wait until Tanner Morgan throws the ball over your head and beats you with a deep play, which he probably will, but it'll take him about 8 attempts to do. So he's going to be 1 for 8 for 42 yards. Big deal. And to your point, 56 runs for Minnesota, 13 passes. And keep in mind, Mo Ibrahim, of course, their starting tailback, one of the best in the nation, has been out since week 1. And Trey Potts, who was a capable backup, gained 150 yards over 3 games out. So they did this with their number 3, 4, and 5 running backs running for 139, 105, and 48, 326 yards total.
It's absolutely embarrassing. I don't understand what they were thinking of this game plan. I want to dive into Mike Locksley more because I think you know, Mark, that I go to bat for Mike Locksley. I said that I believe in this guy.
Here many times. I know
and
it.
I still think that he's capable. But there needs to be some serious questions answered. I looked around today. I'll admit, wasn't really any marquee matchups. I'll sit there and say that, but I watch a lot of games. I look at Minnesota. I look at what they did. I look at Illinois. I look at what they did. And a few other teams as well. I mean, some teams lost, but you could tell they have a team identity. We are year 3 into Mike Locksley's tender. Can you tell me what this team identity is? Because I'm sure not seeing it.
Well, to me, Maryland's about throwing the ball downfield. It's about speed at the outside with Jarrett and Demas, who, of course, is gone for the season, and Talia slinging it around. That's what I think now when I think Maryland football is that they've recruited big speed on the perimeter and some speedy running backs, and they want to get those guys in space. But defensively, the one thing I'll say, McD, is that you're defending Mike Locksley, but at the same time, you basically sat on your couch this afternoon and made an analysis and shored up their game plan that they worked on all week. They worked on that game plan since last Saturday, probably even before that, and you tore it to shreds in about 4 minutes.
It was a horrible game plan. I mean, and listen, I know Minnesota was the better team. I thought we could go in there and win because I thought this offense could make some explosive plays. I was hoping that this defense could just use some common sense and maybe stack the box. So apparently they're incapable of that. But overall, in my opinion, I've never been so. I mean, and listen, I sat through some blowouts with Mike Locksley. And this wasn't a blowout. The final score was 34-16. It was a 18-point game. I mean, it was 34-10. We scored a touchdown late, I guess, so maybe you can't consider it a blowout. But I sat through 54-7 Nebraska in year 1. I sat through Ohio State hanging 73 on us. I sat through Ohio State hanging 66 on us. I sat through that 59-0 Penn State game. I sat through Iowa this past year. I'm going to be honest with you. I've never been more disgusted after a game under Mike Locksley's tenure. I could not believe that they were not stacking the box against Minnesota. I mean, this is the third time Mike Locksley has faced Minnesota, and for them to only put 6 in the box, you're getting beat every time. And also, they can't tackle either. They're horrible at tackling. So many missed tackles. I mean, I just couldn't believe what I was watching defensively.
So we have talked about Maryland. I believe your prediction was 7-5.
I'm lowering it to 6-6. I think we beat Indiana, and I still think we beat Rutgers.
But it was 7-5 before the season, if I remember.
Yeah.
All right. I think I had 6-6. So they're sitting there at 4-3. They've got Indiana, Penn State, Michigan, Rutgers. Ooh, okay. So yeah, let's say they win 2, they get to 6-6. At what point do you lose your confidence in Mike Locksley and believe that they should move on from him?
If they don't make a bowl game, in 2022, and let's say you go 5-7 this year, you can sit there and run with the excuse that your top 2 wide receivers are out. Even though I'm going to admit I do like the wide receiver. I forget his name, Marcus Fleming. He stepped up and made some plays this afternoon. So it looks like he's going to be a number 2 behind Raheem Jarrett. So let's say they go 5-7. Big Ten East is tough. Michigan State is a surprise. Rutgers looks like they have a pulse. They go 5-7. Okay, I'm not happy about that, but I'll accept it grudgingly. If they don't make a bowl game next year under Locksley, I will be calling for his job.
Okay. Got to make a bowl game next year, Mike Locksley.
I mean, if they make one this year, I'll probably be a little bit more kind next year. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm kind of seeing 5-7. They'll probably split between Rutgers and Indiana. Even though with both of those games at home, they should win both of them. But I mean, this defense is horrible. I mean, there's no and it's the buts about it. The game plan was horrible. Ohio State did whatever they wanted. Iowa basically did whatever they wanted. I mean, I was just very disgusted watching this game this afternoon.
As you know, McD, when Locksley was hired, we've had this conversation before. I stated horrible record at New Mexico State, whichever one, I get him confused, wherever he was. New Mexico State, 3-31? Plus, he had 2 fairly serious off the field incidents that didn't necessarily question his moral character because of those incidents, but his wisdom and his judgment. And I thought, why hire him? I don't get it. You're Maryland. You should be a top 40 program in the country. You play in the Big Ten. There should be better candidates out there. I just don't think he was a good selection, and I stated that at the time.
Well, the reason why they hire him, and I think I told you this, is because of his connections to the Washington, D.C. area, and the Maryland and Virginia area, the DMV, and recruiting. I think it's the main reason why he got hired. And they were saying we're getting new facilities, so they thought he would be a great recruiter.
All right, McD. Well, good luck with the Terps and Mike Locksley.
I appreciate it. I'll call in sometime this week and tell you how we're beating Indiana. Stay tuned and call Mark. Go Terps.
Thanks, McD. Good to see the man Steve Dace checking in, Michigan Podcast. I'm sure just about every one of you know who Steve Dace is. Has an amazing YouTube channel and audio podcast right here on YouTube and on your favorite audio platform, Michigan Podcast. Steve is hopeful for a Michigan upset against the spread, I guess. Maybe they'll be like a 40-point underdog this year and keep it within 5 touchdowns based on Steve's estimation. I think he's just he's just deadpanning a bit, believing back here that that the Wolverines have a legit shot this year, but he just doesn't want to get his hopes up. That's what I believe. We've got a super chat coming in. We appreciate those. The Unforgiven here. I'm a diehard Michigan State fan. I was hoping Michigan and Ohio State, but no. And the rumors of Mel going to LSU, a little worried gut feeling. Okay, so you're concerned about Mel Tucker and LSU. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know that I'm the best when it comes to targeting coaches for coaching positions. And I know that you expect that out of me, and I need to deliver on that in regards to people want to know, okay, this job is open or will be open. Let's say the Nebraska job. It's not open, but we've got to be ready to pull the trigger on who are the candidates, who should get that job, who should they go after, who's reasonable, who's within their reach. And Mel Tucker obviously did a fine job at Georgia as an assistant coach and gained a ton of credibility and respect there in what he accomplished as an offensive line coach at Georgia that gained him the Colorado job. And he was good enough after one season to get Michigan State's attention. But of course, Michigan State had exhausted its options at that point and just needed a head coach, a capable head coach, and they overpaid for Mel Tucker, so we thought. Mel Tucker coming off a 5-7 season with Colorado, and when I say 5-7, that was probably better than what they were. So he did a nice job in getting 4 Pac-12 victories and a 5-win season in at Colorado. And then he comes in last year, and I wasn't going to make any evaluation or judgment on Mel Tucker or many first-year coaches because of the craziness of last season and trying to put together a program and hire a staff, implement the staff, get the staff working with the roster that they were not familiar with during the pandemic when they could not have face-to-face contact. So I think that was extremely difficult for any first-year head coach. And Mel Tucker had a couple bright spots last season against Northwestern and Michigan. They were deplorable on weeks, on certain games, and I think that that's understandable. And now we see a Michigan State team that I don't believe is going to be a serious contender for the Eastern Division. But now that we see some vulnerability from Penn State, maybe they are better than Penn State. We've seen Penn State play a bad game today. We've seen them beat up defensively. Their quarterbacks roughed up considerably. And of course, they lost to one of the weaker teams in the conference today at home after losing to Iowa last week. So maybe Michigan State's the third best team in the division. Maybe they will prove to be the second best team in the division when they get their shot next week. So Mel Tucker going to LSU. I think that there are certain aspects of Mel Tucker's, I don't want to call his character because I don't have that much of a knowledge of what he's proven to confirm as a character individual, but he exudes that type of rock solid steadiness, stability, doing the right thing, being there for the young men, being a leader of young men. I think that's in addition to a program builder and a program leader and a football tactician is what LSU needs more than most teams do because of the issues off the field. And so Mel Tucker, yeah, he could go on to LSU. Of course, they've made a nice hire there about 20 years ago from Michigan State. The first part of that comment I don't necessarily get. I was hoping Michigan and Ohio State, but no. Okay. But the Unforgiven, thank you so much for the super chat. Ammonia Wilder is telling us that George Pickens is projected to be back for the Florida game this Saturday. I had not heard that. And of course, George Pickens, the number one target of JT Daniels and the best wide receiver on the team, was hurt in spring practice, I believe the first day of spring practice, and supposed to be out the entirety of the season. And there much speculation as to if he was only going to be able to make it back the last couple of weeks, whether he would bypass the conclusion of his college career and prepare for the NFL draft. But that's been cleared up here in the last month to 2 months in regards to his intention of getting back to play college football for Georgia. So that would be a huge boost to the Georgia football team, of course, like they need it. Mike, if you're telling us the ACC's down this year, my goodness, I don't know what that tells us about the ACC. And I did not know that it could be any more down. It's pretty much the ACC I thought it was, other than Clemson, of course, not being its elite status. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Mark, what's up, man? It's DeAndre.
It is DeAndre. How you doing, man?
Hey, man. Hey, that was a tough loss at that Pitt, man. But I was trying to tell while I used to come on your podcast, I used to talk to Bobby and Pete and what's the name, Jason. I have been saying this since the LSU game. Where's the creativity in Clemson's offense? And not just the offense, but like the last couple years, like the LSU game, you got two receivers that do the same thing. Now this year is even worse. You got 5 or 6 that do the same thing. There's no Octavius Scott. There's no Ray McLeod. There's no Tyler Winfro. There's no Ray McLeod or Rogers. There's nobody to say, let me give you a different type of pattern. Everything seems like it's long or up the sideline. I couldn't understand. I said this to Jason. I said, I can't understand why they would want Ross to play the slot position, and he's coming out a spine injury because he's going to take a lot of shots playing up there. And he's not a quick twitch guy. I can't pronounce the guy's name, but he was out of Florida. Stovall. He was, I think, one of the best slot receivers coming coming out of high school. And I know there's an adjustment, and I don't know if he was there for early enrollment. But I was like, I wonder why they won't play this guy. And I can't understand why Clemson keep putting tight end on the field with 3 receivers. And he's not doing anything. He's running a regular route. So why can't you put 4 receivers on the field? I mean, he's not blocking nobody. He's running a route. So I couldn't understand that, man. And me and Jason always tells me, Tony Elliott's a smart guy. And I no doubt, I mean, he makes way more money than I would ever make in my lifetime. And I'm sure he's a great guy. But, I mean, you could just see it. Like, this offense just doesn't work. I don't understand why they didn't go back and, like, no, Chad Morrissey, you won't be calling plays, but can you come back and help us with our offense? You're the creator of this offense. And I know Chad Morrissey got Clemson in a lot of trouble by with the type of tempo that he ran, but he's not the one calling the plays. So I don't understand why they didn't ask him to come back. And they could have, I don't know. But I just think Chad Morrissey could have helped us out a little bit. I don't know, man. We still got a chance to win the ACC with Miami beating NC State today. Clemson just has to win out, which is going to be very hard because we ain't doing too good of a job of winning. Either we have a winning record, and I'm not going to say the schedule gets easier, but if NC State loses to Wake Forest and Carolina, that will help Clemson out because they still got to play Wake Forest, and Carolina got to beat Wake Forest also. So pretty much USC got our fate in the hand unless Duke could pull off a major upset, which they had a bye this week. I haven't seen Duke play this year, but them and Wake Forest usually play some interesting games. So unless somebody else can knock one of those teams off, that's the only way Clemson is getting in if UNC shows up and beats Wake Forest for us. Wake Forest in NC State. That's the only way we're going to make it to the ACC championship game.
So my only thought, DeAndre, about your wide receiver play is that, of course, as we talked about last week, Joseph Nagata missed the game, and we've talked in recent weeks that he was the one guy that emerged as a reliable downfield threat. So you were missing him, and I think there were other wide receiver injuries, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you missed Latson,
Frank Latson.
Williams.
Yeah, so you had a lot of guys out.
Williams.
But when you say that there aren't the right type of receivers or they're not being utilized the right way, is that also a recruiting thing when you mentioned some of those quick twitch slot guys that you've had in the past in terms of trying to recruit different styles and types of wide receivers?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if Clemson, because I think we had the most wide receivers playing in the field currently right now. I don't know if they just got the big head and said, well, we're not going to go, we're going to recruit these big jump ball guys. Maybe that's what they were thinking, and then they were going to run the ball, force guys to play cover two. I don't know. I just, everybody keeps saying, well, why did DJ have such a great game against Notre Dame last year, right? I said, maybe because DJ was playing with Cornell Powell, who had been there for 5 years. He was playing with ETN, and he was playing with Rogers. Rogers having a good year. I think he's with the Packers. Last time I checked, he's having a pretty good year. He gets a lot of run out there. We all know what Travis Etienne did. Maybe that's why he was more successful. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. I don't know how Shipley missed that ball when we was up 7-0 and he was wide open. But these guys are just not playing for him, not doing what they're supposed to do to help DJ out. Don't get me wrong. I know DJ is missing a lot of balls, but, I mean, that was a given with Shipley. He had to catch that one. I mean, I just don't know what we're doing wrong over there. I don't know why we stopped running the ball, too, because it seemed like we were getting a lot of runs against these guys. But I don't know, Mark. But it's hard to say. I'm going to look at the game tonight. But, I mean, I also question why is Skalski and Spector, why are they always getting these personal fouls for helmet to helmet? I mean, they've been playing in the program for 6 years. I mean, at least 5. I know Skalski been there for 6. But I'm like, dude, stop hitting people with your helmet. And then Moscow, I don't know if the guy said something wrong to him and he just snapped on the guy. But, I mean, they were still down 10 points. But, they had stopped them. I never seen Brentable's defense play so undisciplined like they have played this year. And this is supposed to be a senior-led group. And I know we're missing Breezy, and Tyler Davis came back today, and Tyler Davis wasn't as effective as you thought he would be. But, I mean, I didn't see much pressure on Pickens like we did. And he got his revenge. I mean, because Clemson done mollywopped him the last 2 times before this game, and they actually destroyed him, and he played well today. But Clemson helped Pitt beat them. And Pitt won the game, but Clemson helped Pitt beat them. And I could not understand, where was the free safety when a linebacker was guarding a slot receiver? I mean, I couldn't understand that. He ran right past Britt Carter. I know Britt Carter's supposed to be the next Simmons. You still got to give him a help. Simmons wouldn't have caught that guy. Simmons been burnt like that before. So I couldn't figure out was Andre McCosco, or whatever his name is, the guy for Texas, the freshman. Maybe he was just out of position, but I mean, we got exposed on the long balls, and like I said, go back to LSU. LSU did the exact same thing. What you saw pitch, isolate the safeties in space. Now, who gets beat? Like he should have got beaten in that Ohio State game when we made that big comeback against y'all. Turner. Why is this guy on the field, man? Don't get me wrong, he's a great leader, but he's not a great athlete. And you saw him get burned again today in the corner. So, I mean, maybe they don't have nobody else out there, but, I mean, you can't tell me he's the best player that you got, and you don't have 4 and 5-star guys back there. I mean, I understand you trying to help him out because he was friends with your teammate, but I just don't understand. Sometimes I just think Dabo plays favorites. Because there's a bunch of guys out there that I think I know they don't have the experience of Skalski and Spector, but they're better athletes. And I just understand why they still out there. I mean, sometimes I just don't get it. Because Patterson and Bentley put on a show when he was playing. Maybe he hurt. I don't know, but I just can't understand why these guys are not getting in the game over these two guys who are going to be gone next year. You know, they need more experience out there. Your season, it ain't over, but I just think you need to play. Let them play. A little bit more. Well, how did betting go today, Mark?
Oh, how did my picks go?
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know what,
Yeah,
so
how your picks go?
let's give them a quick look here. Let's see. Hang on just a second. I don't think they were anything outstanding, but I had a decent day. Well, you got, let's see. Let's take it from the top. Took Michigan to cover. They did. I took Pitt to cover. They did. I took Ohio State to cover. They did. I took Illinois plus the 24. They did. So that's 4 straight. But I took North Carolina State to cover. They did not. I took Louisville to cover 4.5. They did. So that's what, 5-1. Took Maryland in 4.5. They did not. That's 5-2. Took Oklahoma to cover. That's 5-3. Took Oregon with the 1.5. They did. So there's what, 6-3. Took Oklahoma State in the 7.5. There's 7-3. Took Alabama to cover 24.5. They did. That's 8-3. Took South Carolina in 19.5. They got destroyed. So that's 9-4. Took Purdue in 3.5. That was not good for me. Where are we? 9-5. Took LSU in 8.5. They lost by 14, so that's 9-6. But I did take Notre Dame to cover 7. They won by 18, so I went 10-6 against the spread. I'll take it, folks. Listen up. Did you hear what DeAndre just asked me? Ran down my picks: 10-6 against the spread today, 12-6 against the spread last week. So join us on Patreon. I think that brings me to 95-64 against the spread this year. $5 a month, 17 cents a day. Patreon, join us there. And there's a whole lot of other stuff there, but you get my picks. All right. How'd you do today?
Yeah, remember, well, I got the Illinois State under. I was worried when it went to overtime. Thank God neither one of them could score. That was 45.5.
Okay.
I took the over with Syracuse, and I took Wake Forest to win by 3. I wish I would have took the points in that one. So let's see, what else did I get? I did a teaser ticket with Northwestern Michigan 57.5, Wake Forest, Clemson plus 10, then Minnesota Maryland 46.5. I think they went over because I won this ticket. And Ohio Oregon 7+.5, which I wish I would have took on the money line now. And Mississippi State. Now, one thing I did follow you on, Mark, I did not take that Oklahoma-Kansas game. Because I remember you said don't take nothing over 25 because that's unpredictable.
Well, I only did that because I pick all the games. But yeah, I don't like to touch those games.
Yeah. So I thought about what you said.
That's
I
just me.
really, yeah, I don't mess with those games either. Now, after I've been doing this for a few years, when you gave me advice about that, that's one advice I did take, because I do notice that a lot of times people will pull up, or you got those late, like you said, late covers, and it's better if you're gonna take the Kansas and the points, which anybody should have done today.
And you don't even know what players are going to be on the field. You don't even know who's going to pull who when.
Right. So, yeah, stuff like that, that's what I had to look at. And, hey, that's why I said I stopped betting on those. Like you said, at 21 points, it's kind of like a cutoff. Even like tomorrow in the NFL, and the Packers have a big 9.5 favorite over the Redskins. No, the Redskins ain't playing well, but the Redskins got a decent defense, and they could probably keep them in the game a little bit. So I wouldn't take 9.5 for Green Bay to beat that, to kill them like that. And they just, you start figuring out trends and stuff, and the house is always going to win, but you have to do stuff to make sure that you can stay within it. Like some of those games that we saw money line games in. Who was it? San Diego State Air Force. I won that one. And I said, man, I should have put this money on the money line. Because I think Air Force was a 3-point favorite. And San Diego State ended up winning the game, which I couldn't understand why Air Force was a 3-point favorite. I couldn't understand it. And I know we all talk about it. Sometimes Vegas makes teams like Air Force look like they're the favorite because they want you to bet more money on the other side, or bet more money on Air Force to make it more even money. So that was stuff that I've been looking at now that I have gotten. I'm not going to say perfect at betting because, like I said, that's why it's called gambling, because you really don't know who's going to win, but you just don't bet nothing that you don't have. But I thought that was a very good call. Because, like, one game, I don't let you go after this, but, like, I'll give you an example. Coastal Carolina, App State, and Arkansas State, and Louisiana Lafayette. Louisiana Lafayette just beat App State, like, by, 20-something points?
Mm-hmm.
And Arkansas State's supposed to be one of the worst teams in college football right now. And look what happens. They only win by 1 point. Then App State beats Coastal Carolina. It's like, wow. Like, what's going on with these guys? And it's just so unpredictable, especially on a Wednesday night. You might have to go to class, or you might be studying. Or it's very unusual to have those games. And I'm learning not to bet on those Tuesday, Wednesday games now. because they'll leave you up in the air. And I couldn't figure out how in the world did Coastal Carolina lose to App State like that. I mean, not Coastal Carolina, but Louisiana Lafayette Arkansas State kept it close to Louisiana Lafayette when it should have been like a big-time blowout. And you were waiting and waiting. I'm like, dang. Like, then you look at the stats, and the quarterback for Arkansas State played pretty much the perfect game. Like, I think he threw for like 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and was like 75% passing. And like, where is that the rest of the year? He won't have another game like that. But, Mark, I'll let somebody else talk, man. I appreciate it. But, man, I've asked you, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter, but I want you to send me your Patreon, because I wanted to try it one more time to see if I can get on.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't see it for some reason. I just posted a comment. There's a guy, Mike, that says 12-6 is okay, but not great. Says something about 70%, 90% is big money. I want Mike. I want you to send me whoever's predictions are 70 or 90% against the spread. This doesn't exist. So I don't know what it means.
Yeah, I look at those shows sometimes. teams I don't know a lot about. I'll go look at some of those shows, even some of those guys who study it all day. I would say they about 50-50 because sometimes I might follow one of their picks. Like, I'll give you an example. Who did Rice play today?
Rice? I don't know.
I can't. Yeah. But the reason why I bring that up, this guy claims that he's a big bettor. He's always betting. And he was like, always bet against Rice. Now, I think Rice had a pretty good day today. And he was trying to say you bet against Rice all the time because Rice is terrible. And I'm like, okay. I followed his directions for a few minutes. I'm like, man, this dude didn't know what he was talking about.
Rice beat UAB.
Whoever Rice played, yep. And and that's what I was saying. Like, he was like, yeah, take Rice to get blown out, whoever UAB to win the game by the points. And Rice is the one that ended up winning the game. And, like, so those guys, and it's all a guess for all of us. And especially this year because we really don't know because of the super seniors and all this other stuff. You really don't know. But that's a perfect example that everybody's not going to be always right. Vegas is not always right. I mean, we go through history. Ohio State over Miami. Perfect example, 2002. I mean, nobody saw that coming. So,
going into this weekend, DeAndre, 41% of the games in the top 25 were upsets. 41%. And that's including Ohio State against Akron, Bama against Mercer. Those are all the games played by top 25 teams. So those are even including the total give-me's, 100% guarantee games. 41%. So
right.
It's been pretty crazy.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate the call.
All right.
Have a good night. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, and then I will get to that super chat that I appreciate you coming in. Welcome. Who's on the line?
Hi, Mark. This is Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing well.
Great to hear. Just kind of experiencing an interesting day in college football. Just a few quick points here. I'm wondering, had this thought about the Oklahoma game today. At what point is a win, like, should it be viewed basically as a loss? Because, or is a certain win actually worse than a loss? And I know, like, the polls and nothing gets the way the perception, like, they won't drop in the polls, I don't think, based on their performance today. But to me, like, their performance today was more pathetic, more embarrassing. Like, if they would have played Iowa State and lost by a field goal today, they would drop. But that wouldn't be nearly as embarrassing as what they did today. I mean, down 10 at half and needing a couple just weird, fluky fourth down conversions to beat Kansas. That is pathetic. That is beyond terrible. And Kansas is genuinely off. I mean, just horrifically bad. They are one of the worst teams in the country. They have one narrow win this season against a very mediocre middle-of-the-pack FCS team that they squeaked by.
Yep.
They didn't beat North Dakota State. They didn't beat Eastern Washington. They beat South Dakota by a field goal, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And they've gotten absolutely massacred in that game. My position is, like, why don't teams get punished when they have performances like that? Like, they should drop to, like, number 14, as far as I'm concerned, based on what happened today. But it's not going to happen. Today was significantly that was a significantly worse outcome than losing a close game against a good team, as far as I'm concerned, just based on everything we know about Kansas.
I understand what you're saying. And in a large part, I agree with what you're saying, because this is not if this were the NFL, all that matters is that you win the game. So if we had an objective playoff system, let's say, and teams were playing similar schedules, then we could evaluate everyone the same way, and we could just make the wins and losses everything, and it wouldn't matter. You just win the game. But we're not in that situation. We have to evaluate teams because we have to compare teams that have similar records, that never play each other, or don't even play a team that plays a team that plays them.
Right.
So we've got to make that evaluation.
Exactly.
So it's a great point that you make, because to your point, Oklahoma just went out and they were down 10-0 at the half. They were down 10 points late in the third quarter. They were only up with 3 minutes left to play and got a questionable call on a 4th down with a 5-point lead, or they would have turned the ball over to Kansas with 3 minutes left, up by 5. And Kansas has proven, well, for years they've proven, but I only focus on the current season. They've proven to be they've basically proven to be the worst Power 5 team and one of the worst probably 10 teams in the country out of 130 teams.
Kansas, Vandy, Arizona, basically that's about the list, right?
So to your point, you are entirely right. If Oklahoma would have played Iowa State, who's probably one of the 15 to 25 best teams in the country, something in that range, and they had lost that game by a field goal, played better, lost the game by a field goal, they would be dropped in the rankings. For this performance, nobody's going to really give it much thought. They're just going to move on. A lot of people are just going to look at the final score and be like, 35-23 is not that impressive, but it wasn't that close. And there are people voting that are pretty clueless on how these games are played and the real competitive nature of some of these games. So I understand your point. That my counter to that, and understand that I wrestle with this too, because I do rankings and try to wrestle just the fact that certain teams win versus who did they play and how good was the performance on the field. Because again, I would like to be in a world in which we didn't have to rate the performance, but we do have to. Otherwise, we would have too many ties for playoff spots. And the schedules are just there's just too much of a discrepancy. Yeah, there's too much of a discrepancy between schedules.
Right.
So what would happen in your eyes, or what should happen? Let's say Oklahoma, since we're talking about them, what if they won every game by 1 point? What would you do with that?
I mean, well, obviously, the schedule would matter a lot.
Well, if they played their current schedule.
Yeah, no, so like, if they played the Big 12, they put them up there. I would probably, it's basically impossible for a Power 5 team to go unbeaten and not be worthy of a playoff spot, at least. But, week to week, it's going to things would matter differently. Like if you beat Kansas by 1 point, that's horrifying. That's pathetic. If you beat Texas or Iowa State by a point, like that's not phenomenal. But if you lose, if you did something, you beat. I don't know. That would be weird. I would have to experience that to know how I would judge it. It kind of reminds me of that first year of the playoff, the year after Florida State won the national championship. You remember this? They had what I consider to be the least impressive undefeated regular season I've ever seen in my life.
Yes.
They just squeaked and choked and coughed by very, very by a very mediocre marginal schedule. Yeah. And then they went to the playoffs and they got absolutely jackhammered by Oregon.
Yeah. Well,
at some point, I'm saying, well, they kind of
in the final result, they did. Yes, they lost by 39 points. You're right. I'm just to me, there are differences between getting just waylaid 28-0 in the first quarter and the game was never a game, versus in that game, it was 18-13 midway through the third quarter. So it was a competitive game for about 2.5 quarters, then they got whipped. So anyway, bottom line, you're right. They got whipped by Oregon.
But you could have never imagined that game going the other way, where it was like if you look at those two teams, you could never imagine Florida State just all of a sudden steamrolling Oregon. Like, you could kind of tell Oregon was just a superior team.
Yeah.
And Oregon had that kind of firepower.
I got your point.
But I mean, like what I'm saying is, I didn't think Florida State was one of the 4 best teams that year, but it's just kind of hard to argue with a team that does just keep winning. But if you're just isolating individual results, I mean, if Florida State, I can't remember like who was really, really bad in the ACC that year, but let's just say it was like Duke or somebody like that. If they play, and I don't think there's almost no teams I can remember that are really as bad as Kansas is right now in the Power 5. I mean, but if you had that kind of performance, I think you should be punished, and teams never are. I mean, it's never, and I mean, you can Oklahoma as sort of an eyeball test. You can kind of compare them to like Cincinnati. Cincinnati didn't have a great day today either, and their final score was actually closer. Against a not very good Navy team, but a Navy team I think is a lot better than Kansas, to be honest. And I mean, the final score there was like 27-20, but it was not really that close of a game. And
yes and no, it wasn't that close of a game. You're right. Cincinnati controlled the game, but Navy put a couple scores on the board, got within a touchdown, had an onside kick, recovered it. They had the ball at midfield with 45 seconds left in the game to try to tie the game. So you're right. In terms of game control, Cincinnati should have had it in hand, but they didn't. So Navy, in a sense, played them closer than Kansas did Oklahoma. Once Oklahoma flew by Kansas, the game was over with a few minutes left. But I get your point.
Yeah,
In different perspectives, the games were closer or not closer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, but I mean, I don't want to belabor those 2 points because Jordan mentioned a couple things, but I don't, and this is, I think, part of your frustration with the AP rankings and all of this stuff is that they just look at the black and white text.
Yes.
And I'm sure many of them just don't look at the games or really don't evaluate the context around the situation. It's just, okay, a kind of bad team. Like, Kansas is not a kind of bad team. They lost by 52 a couple weeks ago to Iowa State. And I think they lost by like close to 50 last week against a really bad Texas Tech team, or a not very good Texas Tech team, I should say. So, I mean, they have gotten murdered in every game other than one game against a really, really low level competition. So,
well, to your point, it sounds like you're familiar with my rankings. I do my best to rank these teams based on their performance on the field. So after 1 week, and Oklahoma had only beaten Tulane 40-35, a game in which came down to a 4th down play at midfield. It was, a half a yard away from Tulane converting and keeping a drive alive to try to win the game. I didn't rank Oklahoma. I didn't have them ranked anywhere. And people went nuts and thought I was an idiot. Well, I was trying to make a point that I'm only evaluating them on one game. I'm not thinking about they've got X number of 5-star athletes on their roster and they're supposed to be this, and I ranked them whatever in the preseason. No, we are starting to play football, so let's evaluate them based on the play on the field. Then the next week against Nebraska, throw out the Western Carolina game. That's almost like a scrimmage. Then they play Nebraska. They win by 1 score. Nebraska's not very good. They're okay. They're decent. They're capable, but they're what, the 10th or 11th best team in the Big Ten? And that's a 1-score game. West Virginia. West Virginia is currently a 2-4 team. And, Oklahoma needs a last-second field goal to beat them. So I think at that point, I've only got Oklahoma like 18th in the country. And people, again, are going nuts. I'm like, if you put any other name on them besides Oklahoma, If you said Kansas State beat Tulane by 5, beat Nebraska by 7, and beat West Virginia on a last-second field goal, we would not be rating or ranking Kansas State number 3 or 4 in the country.
Yeah. No, I completely understand, and I agree wholeheartedly.
But they have continued to win.
Also,
so I try to credit that as well. I try to balance those two notions.
Yes. Do you factor in at all the change in quarterback? Because I do think that helps them a little bit, I guess. I don't know. I mean, obviously today wasn't phenomenal, but I mean, they seem like a different team with Caleb Williams at quarterback than with Rattler.
Yeah.
There at least a little.
For the other 6 quarters that we saw him against Texas and TCU. Again, I don't know about today.
Yeah.
But the other 6 quarters, I take that into consideration to a certain extent. I also took some consideration at the time that Sean Clifford was knocked out of the Iowa game and Penn State was leading by 2 touchdowns, and he leaves the game and the backup quarterback is completely incapable. But at the same time, I try to balance that with, well, that's part of the team. That's part of football. You need capable backups. That's James Franklin's fault in not preparing his backup, because there are plenty of backups that come into games that are prepared and almost as good as the starter. Just because his guy is like a deer in headlights, that's his fault, and that's part of football. That's part of your team. So I try to take both into consideration.
Absolutely. And just thing, the Ohio State's offense right now. They seem like that Indiana. Indiana has a good defense. Not defense. I mean, they really do. Their metrics, everything, their performance here shows that they're not Georgia. They're not an elite defensive unit, but that, and you could maybe chalk up their performance against Maryland and Rutgers to the level of competition, even though no one's doing remotely to Maryland and Rutgers what Ohio State did. I am not seeing anybody in this league, I think there's maybe one team in the country that can really slow this team down. Jamison Williams is a top receiver for Alabama right now, and he transferred out of Ohio State just because he was not going to get any opportunities to play. He would be the number 5 receiver.
Yep.
I watched their backups play. They deep into the fourth quarter when they have guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Abuka.
Yep.
And Julian Fleming just playing garbage time, and you can see just how talented they are. I don't. And they've got Henderson's, I think, clearly the best running back in the country. I mean, I would easily take him over anybody else playing right now.
Really? Bijan Robinson.
I don't know. What'd you say?
Bijan Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
Included.
He's close up there. Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker are kind of, good players, but Travion certainly, I would still take him above them, and I think and the O line's full of the O line's just starting to absolutely kill right now, and it's just amazing. The defense has obviously improved. I think they're still fairly, they're above average, but not killers. Yeah, but this team, I think in the Big Ten, I don't think there's anybody that can really compete with them. I think there's about 2 teams in the country that really can. And you know who those 2 teams are.
I do.
It's just, what?
I believe I do.
It's just, yep, absolutely. It's, and isn't it, it's just unbelievable, all the obituaries that were being written for the Ohio State dynasty, a few weeks back.
I hear you. I heard about them every day. I sat here. We could rewind the tape. It's documented on my channel right after the Oregon game, and then even the next week after the Tulsa game. I don't know how many people I had to listen to that told me I was an idiot and a moron when they said this team's going to lose like 3 or 4 games. And I said, maybe, but what I think is more probable is that they're still going to go 11-1. And most people told me I was stupid.
And if you predicted right now that they would lose to someone else in the Big Ten, they would probably everyone would call you an idiot. Now, just how much everything swings, and I mean, it's college. And you know, it's weird. Is college football is about the only sport like this. If you see like a bad result in the NFL or college basketball or any other sport, people just don't react to it like this. People know the season's a process. The season's, organic. And then, I mean, and in college, I mean, like everything. That's part of the beauty of it, because every single instance matters so much. But it's also, I don't know if there's any sport that has fans with less perspective than this sport. There's just so much volatility in the reactions and the emotions,
and it is understandable because every game is more important than any other sport.
Yeah, absolutely. But you like I haven't looked at the schedule tomorrow, but over the course of the season, there's going to be some game where there are going to be a number of games where teams that finish like 5. I don't even have to say the records now, but like a 5-12 team will be a team that finishes like 14-4 or something like that,
sure.
And there'll be a surprise, but no one's going to read too much into that, right? Like no one's going to say, "Oh, the Tampa Bay's terrible because they lost to the Falcons," in this situation. The earth is collapsing around them, and I don't know. I mean, it's just beautiful and mystifying, and I don't know. It's part of why we love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
thank
thanks
you
for the
very
call.
much,
I
Mark.
appreciate it.
You have a great one.
Absolutely. You have a good one. Thanks for the call. All right. Super chat coming in from Wedgie Ocean. Appreciate that. Penn State is 20-10 under Franklin as a top 10 coach. Okay. We will believe you. That sounds about right. He always finds a way to lose winnable games every year. USC or LSU or whoever can have him. So maybe this is a Penn State fan that's frustrated with James Franklin. I've always ranked James Franklin as roughly the 4th or 5th best coach in the Big Ten. I think he's a good leader and a recruiter, and some of his game decisions and the preparedness of the team is questionable at times, but not horrible, deplorable in any such way. Being 20-10 as a top 10 team, I would have to see who they've played. Obviously, when I think back on Penn State seasons, let's just kind of tuck away 2020 for a second. I know they went 4-5. That's on his record. It counts, but just leave it to the side for a second here. In 2019, nobody was challenging Ohio State in the Big Ten. Penn State, as they typically do, gave Ohio State its most difficult game in Columbus. It was a 21-17 game into the fourth quarter. They lost by 11. That team went 11-2, finished in the top 10, won the Cotton Bowl over Memphis. Their other loss that season, let's see, in 2019, I believe was to Michigan State. That was a bit of a surprising game there. So that would be a top 10 Penn State team that lost to a Michigan State team as a pretty considerable upset there. 2018, Penn State finished 9-4. They lost to Kentucky in the bowl game. They lost to Ohio State after they had the Buckeyes down 26-14 in the fourth quarter, gave up 2 late touchdowns. That was the controversial and frankly stupid decision to have Trace McSorley keep the ball, run that little read option, keep the ball on 4th and 5 that blew the game. And not that Penn State would have won for sure, but they would have had an opportunity to beat Ohio State. They went 9-4, so they lost those 2 games to Kentucky and Ohio State. They must have also lost, I believe, that year to Michigan. Yes. And can't off the top of my head remember whom else they lost to. 2017, they won the Fiesta Bowl over Washington. Of course, that was the year they got off to a great start against Ohio State. They had an 18-point lead, lost in the shoe to the Buckeyes 39-38. Saquon Barkley, of course, was on that team. They finished 11-2. So they had, between 2016, 17, 18, 19, that 4-year stretch for Penn State football was pretty solid. Just a cut below the elites. So be careful what you wish for, but I understand your frustration. You want to win a championship. You want to win the Big Ten championship and then go beyond that. And Penn State's done it, but 2016 is becoming a long time ago. And that was kind of a cute season. That was kind of a, hey, we blocked the kick. We beat Ohio State. We got to the Big Ten championship. We won it over Wisconsin. We played this amazing Rose Bowl game. We lost, but we played this amazing Rose Bowl game. And that was kind of cute. But I'm sure as a Penn State fan that legitimately wants to be recognized as an elite program, you're sick of Ohio State and sick of playing beneath them. Even though, again, to my initial point, Penn State has played Ohio State better than anybody else in the Big Ten by far. It's not even close. Eric, good to see you, man. LFG Ducks, give me your Pac-12 championship prediction. Utah lost today. Does Oregon play UCLA again? Oregon versus Oregon State next month decides the North, the South. Okay, yes, Utah came into today's play at 3-0. They lost to Oregon State, which I did not anticipate, but I am going to admit that I am not the utmost expert on Pac-12 roster talent. I watch it as closely as just about anyone outside the Pac-12. I'll put it that way. So nothing surprises me at this point in the Pac-12. That was, of course, a huge win for both Oregon and Oregon State today. Oregon has cleared most of the hurdles that it's going to face, you would think, although they almost lost to Cal. So they could lose to almost anyone, but Colorado's awful. They've got them next. Washington State has been pretty deplorable, but they played a close game against BYU. Don't know what the final score was today. I know it was down to the wire in the fourth quarter. My predictions, you want predictions? Well, Oregon's the best team in the Pac-12 North as long as Anthony Brown can just make the throws that are presented. Just don't do anything spectacular or try to do anything spectacular, Anthony Brown. Just make the throws that are presented in the offense. A lot of checkdowns. We'll get the tight end open. Although in the Oregon offense, I don't think that's a real viable option. Just make reasonable throws, Anthony Brown. Don't try to do anything else. And we will be able to nurse you to the Pac-12 championship game because Anthony Brown today almost blew that game single-handed. In the South, I haven't seen Utah play a lot. I've seen more UCLA and Arizona State. But, of course, Utah took out Arizona State head-to-head with 4 consecutive touchdowns to salt that one away. So they were obviously dominant. And against UCLA, Utah has that game against UCLA at home. I think that those 3 teams are inseparable. We could play a Pac-12 schedule of 100 games and they could all tie at, 60 and 40. UCLA, Arizona State, Utah. They're all top 30 teams in the country. That's about their range. So I think it's a shame, regardless of who you root for, that it's a shame that Dorian Thompson-Robinson was not on the field at the conclusion of the game. He had lifted UCLA to 2 fourth-down conversions and had them in plus territory against Oregon. I wanted to see that game unfold. I wanted to see those final moments unfold with the best player at quarterback for UCLA and not the backup, who obviously telegraphed the interception and game over. Wanted to see the best guy, DTR, for UCLA, maybe things would have been different. They only needed to get into field goal range. Of course, they had plenty of time to score the touchdown. So maybe UCLA is the best team. But when they played Arizona State, they got dominated in the second half. So we'd have to go game by game. But right now, Utah's at 3-1. UCLA must be at 3-2 in the Pac-12. And Arizona State must be 3-2 in the Pac-12. Correct? Or they're only 3-1. I think we've got a tie between those two at 3-1. And I've got Oregon. I got to see more from Oregon State. I know that they're not getting too much respect, and most people just default to Oregon in the Pac-12 North. But again, just Anthony Brown, just make the throws that are presented in the offense. Just do that, and you don't need to do anything more, and you should be okay. So in the South, Utah's 3-1, so is Arizona State, but of course Utah's got the tiebreaker, and UCLA is 3-2. So we're not going to see UCLA. Well, shoot, they could win the game. But, man, Arizona State's got the game plus the head-to-head. So I still think it's going to be a Oregon-Utah Pac-12 championship game. What I would like to see, Oregon State and Arizona State. How about that? Or Oregon State, UCLA. We've seen Oregon a number of times recently, and we saw Utah play the previous two Pac-12 championship games. Enough of them. Would love to see Oregon State show up and play a Pac-12 championship game. They have arguably the most challenges and adversity in trying to reach the top of their conference, and to see them do that would be tremendous. I would love that. Why are people telling me no? Boo, Mark, boo. Beeves, okay. What's up? What's wrong with me wanting to see something different? Yeah, I know, but I just told you that you asked me you wanted a prediction. I gave you a prediction. Oregon and Utah. But then I told you what I wanted to see. Just like in the ACC. Clemson can still get to the ACC championship game. I don't want to see that. I've seen it 50 times. I want to see Wake Forest go undefeated. I like what Pitt's doing right now. Let's put them in the championship game. That would be cool. Can you imagine Pitt having to have their resume reviewed by the committee, and their one loss would be to Central Michigan? That's the ACC right now. We could have a North Carolina State Pitt conference championship game, and they both lost non-conference games to completely off the radar, unranked teams, Central Michigan and Mississippi State. That's the ACC. All right, everyone. We can call it a night, I believe, here at the Voice of College Football, and I can start working on that top 25 all together now. That actually makes sense. Maybe I'll have that out in the morning. I noticed, and I think it was because there were few upsets last week and few really huge, enormous games, but also probably because I didn't release the list because I was out with my daughter last Sunday, that I didn't get the top 25 out until Sunday night, as opposed to Sunday late morning, early afternoon, and the views went. I'm usually in the 15 to 20,000 range, and it was in the 7 or 8,000 range. Can't have that. Get the top 25 out there. Get it out there, folks. Appreciate everybody contributing here at the Voice of College Football, for everyone who delivered a super chat, for everyone who liked the video. For the rest of you, please hit the like button. Tell people that we're here talking college football every day. We will be here Monday for sure at some point live. Maybe before that, maybe Sunday, maybe, but definitely we will be here prime time or late night on Monday. All right. Here at the Voice of College Football. Sign up for Patreon. It's only 17 cents per day. And I'm over 60% against the spread. And it's going to be well worth your while in the off season to head on over to Patreon. We have a number of things planned to kick in over there. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. We will see you Monday and be waiting the top 25 that actually makes sense. And our power rankings, conference power rankings are coming out as well. And if you've got any requests, let me know. Hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. If you've got any analytics or any type of requests in terms of ratings, rankings, any topics that you would like me to take on in the world of college football, of course. We'll see you next time.